Good evening and thank you for joining us on yet another exciting edition of Sunday Interview as we continue featuring presidential candidates taking part in the August 11 general election. Today, our guest is UNIP President, Mr. Tilyenji Kaunda, who is hoping to lead the nation come August 12th. Mr. Kaunda, welcome to the program.
Good evening, Mr. Zulu.
Good evening.
And good evening to our viewers out there.
I've introduced you as UNIP President.
Yes.
To your fans and to your peers, you are known as TJ.
Yes, I'm
and
TJ, yes.
To many Zambians,
yes.
You are
Tilyenji.
Dr. Kaunda, Kaunda's son. From the east, they'll call you Tilyenji, of course.
Yes, yes.
Who is Tilyenji Kaunda?
My grandmother gave me that name. And as far as I know, I was the first of that kind to be called Tilyenji. By the way, it means what shall we eat?
So you must have been born in a season where there was famine.
I reckon there must have been hunger somewhere. So I've carried that tag. Every time someone calls my name, it's a question. What shall we eat, Mr. Zulu?
Okay, so you tell us more about yourself. When were you born and where you grew up?
I was born in 1954 in Tilyenji, and I grew up there. I went to school. My early years were there in what was then called Tilyenji Lower Primary School. And then I went to Standard 1 those days, to Tilyenji Upper Primary School. And in 1964, that's when independence came and schools were desegregated. Because if you remember that time, they had schools for whites, and then another class of schools for Indians and coloreds, so-called. And then they also had a school for black people. They were all segregated. But since before we integrated, I then went to what used to be a white school, Woodlands Primary School. I think it's called Woodlands A now. So I did my primary school there. Then from there I went to Prince Philip's, which is now Kamala Secondary School. So I did my secondary school education there. So
basically you're born and bred in Lusaka?
Born and bred in Lusaka, in the Republic of Zambia.
When people look at you, they see the former first family, and the one. Yes. You were first born, second born?
Nope, I'm the fourth. I'm fourth born. Because there's Banji Waza, and then late Wezi, and then myself.
And then?
So, then late Masuzio, then Kaweche, then Musata, then the twins, and then Chola. I hope I haven't left anyone out. We're football team.
Well, now I want you to tell us, growing up, did you ever at one point think you were going to get into politics? Did anything in your younger years inspire you to get into politics?
In fact, I was not in any politics right up until 1993, when the MMD then declared the zero option, where they accused UNIP of plotting a coup against them. And then a lot of UNIP leaders were caught at that time. And then I happened to be taking food for my brother who was in jail at Woodlands, and it was there that I was also taken up. And then when I was in jail with the others, with the other politicians, I was a businessman. When I was in jail, that's when they recruited me in jail. That's when they said, come and join us.
So your joining politics was out of anger? Or
not anger. I can tell you, I didn't feel
anger. I was the system that had jailed your brother.
No, not that. No,
fighting
there was no anger. We're all surprised that was happening, but I don't remember feeling any anger. But I felt a conviction that I should help my friends, because when we came out, then we said galvanizing the party so that we could fight the zero option accusations in courts. And that was my first contact with UNIP structures. And I worked very closely with Lusaka District. I would mobilize funds and other support and things like that for them.
I want to take you back to your education. I know we're going to talk about your political life as we go on. Your education, after you completing secondary school, what else have you done?
After school, a family in Canada, the Phillips, they invited me to come and do my education there in Canada. So that's why I did my Bachelor of Arts in Social Science. Yes.
Your work career, you want to talk about that as well?
Yes, sure. After finishing school, I applied to Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and I was recruited as an executive officer. And I worked in the ministry for some, I think, about 2 years. Then I applied to Cabinet Office for the post of principal, and then I was accepted there. And I worked there for about a year. Then I decided to go into private business in 1984. And I think I did pretty well.
Growing up as a son of the president, did you get any special preference? You talked about applying to foreign affairs, applying to cabinet. Those were automatic recruitments, weren't they?
Well, those days there wasn't such a shortage of jobs as there is now. And also I think, obviously, I remember I was in a flight to Canada one time, and Dr. Stekemwale was there. He was then foreign minister. And we got to talking, and he told me what I was doing and things like that. Then he said that, okay, when you finish your education, look me up. So it stuck in my mind. I think we were on a flight together. So when I finished my education, I went, I said, okay, I've got my degree. And then from there, they grouped me. I mean, I was green, but they taught me well. It was foreign affairs. And I remember the officers there were really good at their work. And they taught us from scratch, because we were juniors when we were joining.
So government to you wasn't that exciting? You had to leave to go into private?
Government was very exciting. Because lots of things were happening, you know, meetings, reports. I learned a lot about world affairs, and also how to write reports. What you learn in school is different from what when you go out into the field. And as I said, the interaction there was great, how they filed their filing system and all that. And it was a new experience.
If it was exciting, why did you leave?
I left because I was beginning a new family. And I said that I need to do a little bit more. And also, of course, I remember that time my brother was running a company, and he was short of a CEO in his company, transport company. So I said, okay, I'll come and help you out.
So now, you've spoken about your family. Tell us more. You're married? Have children?
Yes, yes. I'm a grandfather now, Mr. Zulu.
And people want the details. How many children?
3 children and 3 grandchildren.
Let's talk about politics. You said you joined politics quite late. And
not late. Later in life. In fact, okay, it would seem that since my father was a politician, that I would be a politician early. So perhaps you may be right. But I just was not interested in politics.
So you
until that time.
You got interested in politics. And what triggered your personal interest was that you really wanted to help your friends?
Yes. Because that time the situation was actually critical. I mean, if you remember, people were jailed. Some were tortured. I remember one died of torture. So also things were happening. So it seemed something that I could contribute to. And you know, in politics, once you get caught and you understand what's going on, then it's difficult to leave.
So would you now call yourself as a seasoned politician? Well-versed? I
think even just as much as you are, perhaps maybe I'm just closer to the fires. But I think that most Zambians are pretty good political analysts. So they understand what's going on. But we are closer to the fire. We understand what's going on, perhaps a little bit more, perhaps.
So how would you describe your political life now? Probably that's 93. We're probably talking more than 20 years of being a politician.
Yes.
How would you describe your political life?
I joined it green, and I think now I've a lot more experience. And strange enough, I'm teaching others. I'm teaching the younger ones who have joined us.
And how would you describe Zambian politics?
I think we've gone off the rails a little bit. Because if you remember, we'd said that we were going back to multi-party politics, and everybody was very excited and happy about that. But I think that I would say, without demonizing anyone, I would say that our friends in the MMD didn't seem to understand what multi-party politics are. Because that's supposed to be that you've got freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, and you are free to criticize the government in power. But I think they didn't understand that, and I think they reacted rather harshly with a strong hand. For instance, I'll tell you that in 1996, UNIP was on the way to coming back to power. I remember they changed the constitution to block Dr. Kaunda and also to block Chief Nyemboyeta, who was his vice president, from standing, using the constitution. Now, obviously, those are undemocratic things to do. So I think that they didn't understand what democracy is all about. And I think that now a culture has come in of intolerance towards opposition, whereas opposition and the party in government they're supposed to be partners. The watchdog are the opposition. They point out what you're doing wrong. You do your work as a party in government. So this has become distorted, I think, in our system. So we need to work on that one.
So what have you learned from probably your successor? You succeeded Francis Nkoma?
No, Rapson
Chongo as party president.
Yes.
And what have you learned from that?
I think that you have to have a thick skin, and I think you have to be patient, and you have to have a long-term view of what needs to be done in politics. A long-term view of politics is important, and also you have to understand that you can contribute from any point where you are. You can contribute to national building. What
did you learn from your father, Dr. Kaunda?
I learned to bring God into the way you carry out your politics, because I always learned that you know his favorite verse is, I think it's found somewhere in Mark, where it says, "Love your God with all your heart and all your soul, all your mind and all your strength." And not only that, love your neighbor as you love yourself. And that means that you must do unto others as you would them do unto you. So what comes out when you are a political leader, you're supposed to practice servant leadership. I'll remind you, Mr. Zulu, that if you go back to the last days of Jesus Christ, he actually washed, the Son of God washed the feet of his disciples.
Now, were you under any illusion as you were taking over as UNIP president that you were probably going to succeed virtually just by virtue of being Dr. Kaunda's son?
No. In fact, I remember that as an activist in the party, I think I drew the attention of the state then, and then my father actually asked me to leave and go and stay in Zimbabwe for some time, because things were not that safe at that time. But then when my brother was killed in 1999, he was assassinated, then party leaders came and said, "You need to come back. Some vacuums have developed." So that's when I came back in 2000, and I stood for the post of Secretary General, and I got that one. I was not dreaming or thinking that I would push for the post of president, no. I was just doing my part as Secretary General. But events developed.
You were pushed to become president?
Not pushed. I think just events came along. But as you rightly say, perhaps people think that if
you used your father's name.
I wouldn't say I used. I've never at one point used my father's name, because he told me quite categorically when I was 10 years old. He sat me down. He made an appointment for me to come and see him. He called me to his office and he told me that in this country there's only one president. I don't want little children running around saying that I'm president or I'm so and so. I don't want everybody to hear that. If you want to achieve something, go and achieve something for yourself, but don't use my name. So that has never featured. I've never said I'm the president's son here, or do this or do that. No, I've never done that. We're forbidden to do that.
Did it give you an advantage with going into that Congress?
I think
standing to be president.
Obviously, yes, obviously, Mr. Zulu.
People must have thought you had all the qualities of Dr. Kaunda.
I think they don't think so much as of that qualities. I think they think of it that they think of the name and say, okay, this is a good name, so it can be used. Don't forget that that time I was green. I was very green in terms of actual politics within the structures. I was a sympathizer, I was a fundraiser and things like that, but I was not in the mix. So people who were seasoned must have thought, okay, let's use the name. The same thing,
you know, party forward.
To move, perhaps, I don't know whether it was to move the party forward, but I think maybe to have a certain amount of cohesiveness.
There were a lot of wrangles in your party at the time.
There were a lot of wrangles, Mr. Zulu.
The party was almost disintegrated.
It was disintegrated. That is an understatement even.
So you were the savior?
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that. I think we just followed the rules of how a party should be run. And my colleagues and I think we persevered. We had an ideology that we believed in. We also thought that the party can contribute to national politics. And we held it together.
Now, you probably, maybe when your party members look at you, and probably when other people watching you look at you and listen to UNIP and read about UNIP, you have not performed to expectation, probably.
It has been a tough road.
You found a lot of members of parliament when you came in as president. A number of them, not a lot of them, but just a number.
Yes.
But today you stand with no member of parliament.
Yes, what you must understand that the fortunes of an organization comes and goes. But what's important is what you believe in. So that whether you have members of parliament or councillors there or not is immaterial. But if you feel that the country should move in the same direction, then you must participate in national politics, especially if you're an institution like UNIP. I think that you've seen what happens if you have no belief in the organization or in who you are, what happens to you. You've seen political parties have come and they've gone, they've disappeared. Ask yourself, why? Because there's no foundation. Now, UNIP is a party with a foundation. Remember, we always say that the struggle continues and victory is certain, but the struggle continues. It never ends because we are fighting for people's rights. And right now, we're fighting for the economic and democratic rights of the Zambians. So those don't come and go. They're always permanent there. So if you feel that something is wrong and you're a citizen and you want to stand up to it, then you stand up to it. Irrespective, I'm sure you know the history of many political struggles. You never begin with members of parliament.
So have you run down the party?
I think that we've improved the party.
Fortunes have probably continued to... Why be in the opposition if you're not going to have a councillor representing your party?
You must
not going to have a member of parliament.
You must fight to get in.
And you keep on losing numbers in terms of having representation in institutions that matter.
I would say this. Look at other people's struggles and see how they've done. What counts is the perseverance until you get what you need to achieve. And it's always a gradual process. I'll remind you of the late President Sata. If you recall how he began, if you turn back the page of history, go back to 2001, what happened when President Manawasa was preferred over Mr. Sata in terms of in their party structure of MMD. He was bitter, he was upset because they had been there all along to fight for the MMD, but they didn't choose him. So he went out on his own. And he struggled, how many years?
10. But
from 2001?
That should be 10 years before he became president.
Yes.
But he was on the rise. He had one member of parliament in 2001.
I do believe... Mr. Zulu, I do believe...
More than 30 members of parliament in 2006.
Yes.
Then he eventually won the election in 2011.
Yes,
UNIP, on the other hand,
yes,
you had members of parliament when you took over. Was that 1993? 2001.
Yes.
Today is 15 years down the line. Yes. You have no member of parliament.
Yes.
In this case, you are not on the rise.
No, we are on the rise because what
you are going down. Basically.
No, we are on the rise. I'll tell you why. When we go around the country and we talk to people, they say, no, we think that UNIP is a better party because they've got better principles and they've got a better vision than the others. So they always say, no, don't stop, please keep on. We need you to be there. And this is across the board. The key thing in our electoral system, I wasn't going to say this if you didn't ask this question, because you're going to say sour grapes, but it isn't. That our system is not perfect. I'll tell you, 2001, the opinion that Mazoka won, but he was cheated.
Which is an opinion, yes.
It's an opinion, but a valid one, because most of us were there. We saw what was happening. We saw how the counting was, that he was on the rise, and then the counting was stopped for a couple of days. And then when they reopened, then he had lost. So, and then 2006 also, a lot of votes which came in were questionable. But our system has got no referees.
How can you question a system that is able to change a government?
Yes. Well, you can question it. You can question it because
this is a system that changed the government in 1991.
Yes, it changed 91. By the way, 91 was the perfect election.
Because your father was in power?
No, not because of that. But then there was a peaceful handover.
There was a peaceful handover in 2011.
And there was no acrimony. But if you remember that 2001 there was acrimony, 2006 there was acrimony, even 2011 there was acrimony, because RB complained that something is wrong.
Would you describe that as acrimony, or would you describe that as just complaints?
No,
I think sometimes,
and
probably they will always find a reason why it's
genuine.
lost.
Sometimes it's genuine, because if you go back and look at the results, something definitely did go wrong. Something went wrong in 2001. Something went wrong in 2006. I know, because we were counting the votes and there were a lot of discrepancies, quite large actually. And then also 2011, people are saying, but what happened here? We don't know whether somebody counter-rigged or rigged. Okay, we don't know what happened.
How can an opposition party rig an election?
And then 2015,
it's not possible that it's not possible that an opposition party can rig an election. Is that possible?
Oh, Mr. Zulu.
Anyway, I don't want us to go into the nitty-gritty of what rigging is.
Right.
Because maybe I should put you on the spot.
No, I'll tell you what. Democracy is not really a perfect system. It's a fairly good system, but it's not a perfect system. So rigging can be done at any point by anyone.
So you really...
It all depends on how much back you've got.
Would your complaint be called fair in that if
definitely
if you're number last,
yes,
you're the last one in a race,
yes,
would you still complain?
Let me say this: in 2001, we're not the first amongst those who lost. The second one complained, and we were looking. We're not second, and we agreed that something here has gone wrong.
Let's look at your party.
Yes,
without looking at other parties that are complaining.
Let's look at it.
Your party has not gotten any closer to getting into power.
I think we have. I would beg to disagree. I think we have. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
I've you didn't contest.
We didn't. No. 1996 we contested. 96 we boycotted because of the rigging of the constitution. There was a general consensus in the in Zambia that it was wrong to block somebody from standing because his father was born outside of the country. That's a statement which is there now today. That's the clause which stopped Guy Scott from running for the presidency in 2015, if you recall. And then also it was wrong to put in the constitution that if you're a chief, you cannot participate in national politics. So I think all those were wrong. So we boycotted on behalf of the nation, and many people supported us. In fact, I remember the political pundits at that time said that that UNIP was coming back to power. And I remember because I was an activist at that time. We did a lot of work.
Based on, well, we could judge probably based on political analysis. But
well,
let's take
somebody who's independent of Zambian politics. The BBC announced that Kenneth Kaunda was the comeback kid, that he was coming back. Those were outside analysts. So, but please continue.
2006, you were served as chairman for the short-lived UDA.
UDA.
Yes.
It wasn't short-lived. It had its lifespan. So it was not short-lived. It was not shut down. We had a lifespan. We said we are contesting as an alliance for the 2006 elections. Once they were through, then that was the lifespan of the UDA. So it was not short-lived. It lived its time. How
would you describe your experience under the alliance?
That's why I was saying that, you see, a lot of results which came out were skewed.
Your experience as a politician?
They were skewed, yes, as a politician. I'm saying that in 06, the results were coming out, they did not match with what was at the Electoral Commission of Zambia. A lot of votes were miscounted.
I'll leave it at that. I know ECZ is not here to defend themselves.
Okay, let's scratch that.
So we could probably skip that.
But
however, how ready are you for this election while we're still on politics?
We're always ready. We're always ready. That's why
always ready, but never really delivering.
No, I think that what you must keep on punching. You can't enter a ring and say no. This is round 2 now. I must relax. Round 3 I must step out. No. Once you're in for the fight, you're in for the fight. If it's 2 rounds, it's 2 rounds. It's 3 rounds, it's 3 rounds. That's why I'm saying that there are some political parties which entered the ring, but they're not there today. Why? Because they don't have a belief. We have something to believe. We said, no, we can deliver this country from this state to a state which functions and which can hold its head high amongst the family of nations. Do you think
UNIP still exists?
Definitely. Go anywhere and say, what's UNIP? They'll tell you there are UNIP members here. Anywhere you go, say, take me to a UNIP member, they'll take you to a UNIP member. So we're nationwide, we are there. What you should ask me is that how tough is it to compete in this current environment? You should ask me that.
Well, are you fielding in all constituencies?
No. What we are targeted just the number of constituencies that we thought we should manage according to our budget. That's what we did.
So how do you hope to really influence Parliament with not so many numbers?
You can. It's a democracy. It's a democracy. In a democracy, you can function because you're supposed to be. I believe that you've got a number of MPs that you can nominate, for instance. That is there. You can form alliances if you want. It's a fairly good system. Not perfect, but it's a good system.
How hopeful are you in this election of getting a good number of members of Parliament?
I'm hopeful. That's why I'm asking the Zambians to vote for UNIP, because I think that it's time for a change. Actually, we do need a change, Mr. Zulu. The country has slid down too far. I think if you look around, you find that people's welfare is non-existent. People are trying to survive on the streets. And that's not how a country should be. It can be very much different.
You're confident, but people still feel your stronghold has slipped from you. You had Eastern Province as your stronghold. Your last member of Parliament was
I think that we're present everywhere. We're present everywhere. Perhaps other parties have strongholds, but I think that for UNIP, we feel comfortable anywhere in the country. We can raise up.
So why should
the only thing which is wrong with our democracy is that we haven't structured how campaigns should be funded and limited what can or cannot be done. That is the only thing. Other countries do that. They've got rules and regulations of how much money you can put into a campaign. They've got rules and regulations of how much the system can match your funds with what you have, so that you can equal the playing field. But here in Zambia, it's free for all.
UNIP is supposed to have,
we're not complaining.
It's known to have assets. Do you have enough money to run around? Shouldn't you have enough money to run around?
People, I said this, that most political parties have got a business side to them. I remember MMD had moped. I don't know if you remember that. And if you remember also at PF also has got a business wing. So they all have their business things. But our core business is politics. All I can say is that our wing has succeeded better than others because of better management.
So ideally you shouldn't complain.
There are companies running along. There are companies running as persons in their own right. We don't interfere with their running.
Why should people vote for you as TJ or Mr. Tilyenji Kaunda?
I think that people should vote for myself and for UNIP, because the most important thing that we know that we can turn the economic fortunes of our citizens around. We can make things better. With better economic policy, we're saying that government can't stand back and watch its citizens suffer. That there should be so much unemployment. A government should stand up and correct that, because it has the powers to do that. It takes political will to say we are going to take certain measures to make sure there's employment in the country. And also we're saying that when it comes to matters of education, you can't leave that to individual families, because individual families' fortunes are different. Some cannot manage. Now each child by definition is a ward of the state. Each child. So it's up to the state to make sure that each child goes through from grade 1 right up to university without having to give out money up front. If you remember in the UNIP days, we used to bond students. We bond them. So, okay, you're going to go to school, you're going to finish your school, but we only begin paying for it when you begin work, depending on what happens. Yes, there was that. And also we're looking at matters of health.
Let's look at your manifesto, your vision for the country.
That's what we're going into now.
I know you're scratching. I want you to go deeper, focus. I want you to pick out, pick out what one major thing would you do if today or tomorrow or come 11th or August 12th you won the election? What would be your major focus?
Of concern, Mr. Zulu. Of concern to us is unemployment levels. They're too high. We can't have our citizens walking in the streets trying to scratch a living. We can't have our children trying to find food in rubbish piles. We cannot do that. So for us, it's a dramatic intervention by government into the business life of our citizens. We must empower them, come what may.
So it's employment creation is one of your priority.
We must. In fact, I hate using the word employment creation because everybody is saying it. Employment creation.
You want to use which word now?
For me, we say economic empowerment.
Economic empowerment.
Better. Yes.
So how do you hope to do that?
Well, as you know, Zambia is a rich country. I don't have to go into the details. You can throw a seed in any place in our republic and it will grow. We've got the largest water reservoirs in this region. It's an envy of everybody. We've got people who are prepared to work hard. I've heard people say that Zambians are lazy. And I said, it's not true. If you drove in the streets last night, for instance, you're going to find in Great East Road kids selling brooms, 19 hours. And you tell me Zambians are lazy. Zambians are prepared to work. What is missing are the opportunities for them. We are prepared to create those opportunities. Government has the power to do that. Shall I give you an example?
People want practicals.
Shall I give you an example?
I want you
take America. Remember the Bush-Obama years, part of them? Remember? That there was an economic crunch in the States which affected the rest of the world. Do you remember that? What did the Americans do? What did Bush and Obama do together? What did they do? Government intervened. They went to those companies which were collapsing and they poured in government, taxpayers' money to hold them up. In other words, they nationalized them for a period until they stabilized. That's how they saved the situation. So what should the government be prepared to do here in Zambia to save the situation? Intervene. Because that's why people put you into power. Use that pen of yours to get to work.
So are we going back to UNIP policies of
the UNIP of yesterday?
Pre-1991
Mr. Zulu,
companies being nationalized?
Mr. Zulu.
Are we
no. We created companies. Created them, which our friends came and sold. I hate to use the word foreigner, but that's what happened.
Some of them were nationalized.
No. You're talking about a few which is in the B 1964.
Which is some.
Right? Just a few. But remember, we created many more. In other words, that's how you create jobs. Because we knew. For instance, people drink tea, people drink juice. All those companies, people eat pineapples. People love honey. So we created companies around all those products. And who was working in those companies? Young Zambians, able, well-educated, and they could market these things across the whole world. We created cooperatives. They were big. They were trading on world markets. Now, what was wrong with that? Now, our friends came. Okay, they're not here, so we're going to talk about them. But these things are not there anymore. So we are saying that UNIP ideas, an idea doesn't grow old if it's a good idea. If you say love your fellow man, that's a good idea, isn't it? So how can you say that one is an old idea, forget it? We can't do that. So we're saying the UNIP of yesterday is the same UNIP which is today, and it also looks up to the future tomorrow. It looks on the future. That's why we still existing today. Our friends, as I told you, they've come and they've gone. Where are they? How many political parties have disappeared? So many.
So are you talking about government into running business?
We say a parasite.
You do not agree with government having no business in business?
I believe that necessity knows no laws when it comes to the living conditions of the citizens. It knows no laws. It must do what is necessary to save the people. What is the issue with that people? People are dying and just watching and said, no, we must be capitalist, laissez-faire. If they sink or swim, it's their business. No, it's not true. That's why I said in America, government stepped in. Why? Because they said, no, we must save the jobs of Americans. So UNIP is saying we must save and create jobs for Zambians. That's what we're saying. You
will create companies and run them as a government?
You don't run them. Your citizens run them. Your citizens run those companies. Who was running Zambia Airways? That great international airline. It was Zambians. Who was flying those planes? Young Zambian pilots. They go anywhere. In fact, right now, because they've got no work here, they found jobs outside. They're teaching white boys in Canada and in England.
There's a difference where shares are floated and the company is being run by the public.
You're talking about
an institution where government owns the company and is running the company.
You can have variations, Mr. Zulu. You can have variations. You can have private participation in parastatals. There's no limit. That's why I said necessity knows no laws. If I want to create a company and there are citizens out there who also have matching assets, you go together. You move ahead. In fact, let me tell you something. We had a privatization plan, a blueprint for Zambian parastatals, except ours we're going to transfer the ownership to Zambians, not to foreigners. That was the key difference between ourselves and the MMD. The blueprints were there. We left them for him. We said, these are blueprints for privatization if you want to privatize. And they had been professionally done. And they were going to be management buyouts. In other words, now we're going to have private citizens now running these companies.
Let's look at education. Are you still promising free education?
You call it free education. You call it free education. I'm saying that it's an investment in the future of the nation, of society. You can't survive if you have an educated population. You cannot. Again, let's look at examples. America. They began giving free education, as you call it, to their American children in, I think, 1647, somewhere around there, many years back, centuries back. Free education in the state of Massachusetts. They started giving free education. And look at where they are now. So if you don't invest, you don't reap. So first we're saying that each child is important. Invest in that child. Direct that child. Match what industry needs to what you must put into your children's minds. Do that.
So what are you promising people in terms of education? Free education from grade 1 to...
Grade 1 up to the end. Because it's an investment. It's an investment. University, tertiary, everything. Because we want a planned outcome for our children. We don't want to throw them into the wind.
And where do you get the money?
It isn't a question, it's about management, not money. There's always been money in Zambia. Don't let them tell me anything. There's always been money. It's how you manage it. And our approach is that if you, Mr. Zulu, is facing a problem, then I must face a similar problem if it comes to education. You must have equal access. But what it is now is that some have more and others have nothing.
The reality is that when MMD was taking over government from UNIP, a lot of these institutions had deteriorated. And because of the free education that you were given, there was no money to run these institutions.
Let me not argue with you, right? I won't argue with you. If you come to a garden and say, okay, the previous gardener was doing a bad job, I can do better. You're saying that forget the sins of the previous gardener, and now I'm in charge. Grow your food. MMD failed. In fact, it did worse than what was accusing UNIP of. It did far much worse.
Do you still feel government is going to have enough money to run all the institutions? Good
management. So I'm telling you, I said money has been leaking.
Using which funds?
Money has been leaking from the government coffers. Every year money leaks. Where does it go? How can you find money to steal, but you can't find money to run your education? How is that possible? People go into government saying, I'm not going there for nothing. They go there to make money, to make business while they're in government. Meanwhile, they're saying there's no money to run the education system. That's not true.
So you will run education system by cutting expenditure or cutting wasteful expenditure, as you would call
First of all, that's why we always said there is always this thing called greed in man. None of us, you are not an angel, nor am I. But you must have rules governing how you're going to behave when you're sitting in a government office. That's why we have the leadership code. When you're sitting there, you can't do business when you're sitting there. You can't be saying, no, I must get myself a contract to supply trucks or to get ammunition or to get a maize contract or a fertilizer contract. You cannot do that. You are there to provide service to the citizens. Don't do business when you're there. But the greed in man must be kept in check. That's what we're saying. And we intend to do that. If you steal and you're a minister in a UNIP government, there's no question, there's no holy cow, there's no saying no, forgive whatever it is, you go. You are there to serve the public.
You're offering free education, but even the unions in the education sector have said it's not possible.
How?
They've said the parties selling this manifesto
are just
out to manipulate the people.
Mr. Zulu,
and win the votes, walk away.
Mr. Zulu, I fail to understand their thinking. Okay, in this modern age, when you can put a man on the moon and send rovers to Mars, and you tell me you can't educate your children, a few thousand kids, how is that possible? They must unlock their minds. This free education to people, and in other ways, I don't like to, an investment in education is a must. If you don't do that, then your nation will sink. How has China managed to come up so far? How have they managed? They sent their kids out, they've educated their children. And now look where they are now, 50 years later. So if people are saying that you can't give free education, then you're doomed. And UNIP is saying, no, that is not true. we can deliver education.
What else are you promising?
This is the modern age. I think that you must guide your children, I think, from early on. You mustn't wait until secondary school to decide what they are going to do. Identify their talents very early. I remember one time I went to North Korea many years ago, and I found grade 5s working on a truck engine, examining it. Little kids looking at it and learning how it works. And now they are at a nuclear power. So invest some and you reap. Invest more and you reap more. Invest properly and you shall live properly. It's a no-brainer. You teach your children, and it's possible. This is the modern age. You can be efficient in terms of how you deliver education to children. Very efficient. And then they have to be expensive. People look at money, think that first you must have been kwacha in the bank, then you can begin doing your work. That is not true. You can have 1 kwacha in the bank and still begin to teach your kids. Mr. Zulu, I can teach you 1 + 1 without a blackboard, on the ground, in the sand. I can draw a 1 and put a plus in the sand, and the 1 equals 2. I can teach you in the sand. So don't come and tell me it's too expensive.
Let's look at the health sector. What are you promising?
Every Zambian is entitled to health care. If people put their minds to it, they can have hospitals that tick. They can have doctors who are well provided for, and other equipment is there. They can have well-trained nurses and other professionals there. They can have well-trained technicians. It can be done. So you tell me, this is one planet. It's a little planet, and others are doing well, others are not. What is the difference? You must ask yourself that. How are others managing? How are other countries managing, whereas we are not? We have looked at these things, and we said, no, it's possible to deliver health care to Zambians. You can do it. Organize yourselves correctly. It's all, what matters is just your will. Do you want to do it? And you can't have politicians who come and say, no, I've come here to make money. You know, when they get sick, they get flown out. They don't go to UTH. You work on UTH, such knowing that when you get sick, you go to UTH. That's how you should do it.
Agriculture, there's been a call for diversification from over-dependence on copper into the agricultural sector. I
agree 100%. The only difference is that we are serious about it, and we know how it can be done. I can tell you just the basic outline of what needs to be done. Okay, you've got peasant farmers out there who are willing to work, okay, but they have no money. Provide them with inputs, equipment, extension officers, okay, and then give them the pre-season requirements that they have. At the end of the season, with a robust marketing system, you collect their crops, put into storage, and then pay them what the difference of what they've grown. You take out the costs and you pay them the difference, and you do that every year. Every normal country in the world does that. They support their farmers because that is your food security. A country that can feed itself is totally useless. You can't depend on handouts. A beggar. You've got fertile soil which can grow, and people are willing to work and do an honest job. It's ABC.
In terms of farming, there's been a lot of very few people have had a different focus on what has been introduced already. What people are just changing is numbers. There's a farmer input support program, and the debate is I'll give 5, I'll give 8, I'll give 10, I'll give 12. Do you have a different mechanism?
Forget about that. You know, you asked me, is UNIP the same then? The UNIP in many ways is very much the same. We'll do what we used to do. Give a farmer according to his need. If he thinks he can grow 1,000 bags, give him inputs for 1,000 bags to grow. If you think he can do 4,000, do it. If you can manage 100, then give him accordingly. You do it, and it works. Those who are strong,
those who are strong, will be elastic. All the farmers growing now almost
you cannot go and treat each disease with paracetamol. You can't. These are different, and people are different. Their strength is different. There are some who can work hard. There are some who can work half as hard. There are some who are better organized. There are some who are not. But you give each according to the effort that they can. So don't limit. How can you say each one gets the same? That's ridiculous.
So in your view, farmers will not get the same amount of input?
According to your strength. If you think you can grow 1,000 bags, here it is. Get your pre-season loan. In terms of inputs.
Again, I'll still ask you, where are we getting the resources?
Do you know what?
We do not have
That's
that.
What, yes, you do. I beg to differ. I beg to differ. Yes, you do. What you're not is organized. These previous regimes have not been organized, disorganized.
Including the UNIP regime?
No, UNIP was organized.
We still had problems.
Yes, of course, there will always be problems.
We had the money, we had the resources.
There will always be problems, but what counts is how you meet the challenge. That's what counts. And you can meet the challenge. You can meet. There's nothing that God throws at you that you cannot solve. You can. Farmers need inputs, you can manage, if you are a government, you are a government. If you think you can't, then don't go and volunteer for the job. But we know as UNIP that these things can be done. They are possible. It's not a daydream.
Is it fair for you to come and say you can do everything well? UNIP did it well, and in the actual fact, people voted you out of government because they thought you had failed.
Well, no. I don't think they thought that we had failed. Okay? People love a change.
Poverty levels then were not very low, were they?
I think that, for instance, you hardly saw any street kids because kids were looked at as welfare of the state. So times were much easier then because of better organization. As I say, it all counts from the man at the top in the civil service. If the president is behaving well and is working well, then everything down here works well. All you do is tell the civil servants your policy and say implement it, and you monitor them, and things work out. So it's a matter of what your will to do is. That's what it comes down to. It's not that there are no problems. Problems will come, but you must meet them. For instance, there will be some years when the crop fails, okay? But you should have had some good years before when you had saved up. It happened a lot, when you was in government. We're not saying that.
You're not saying you're the best.
We're not saying We're not saying that we are angels. I said all of us are sinners. We all have the same first parents, Adam and Eve, who fell from grace. So we are all the same. But what makes us different is that we take cognizance of the fact that we are sinners, and we repent, and we make sure that we ourselves don't commit crimes. We know the instructions. Look after the widows, look after the orphans, look after the poor, look after the strangers within your gates. It's simple. Don't be chasers after bribes. The minute Mr. Zulu begin chasing after bribes, and that your system collapsed. So you have to agree as a group that we are not going to steal. And if you steal, there is the door. No holy cows.
What other sectors are you focusing on? I know you've spoken about agriculture, we've spoken about education,
yes,
we've spoken about creation of opportunities. You don't want to call it job creation, I know.
Well, of course it is job creation, but I'm just saying everybody's saying job creation, but they're not saying how they do it. First, we're saying that no, specifically government is going to intervene. And for instance, if you talk about the mines, we know that government is continuous. The agreements that they've made with investors remain, but we're saying that there is no agreement which cannot be renegotiated. So if we see that there's a bad deal in the mining sector, we say no, partners, this is a bad deal. It won't work for long. Let's change it.
What else are you focusing on? That was my question in terms of.
I think basically we said our main focus is that we want Zambians to have a better economic life. And that's what we're talking about, all these things. We're saying that first of all, we must have jobs for Zambians. They must run the economy. For that, we're saying industrialization is very much key. We must do that. We must industrialize. We must add value to our goods. There is no choice. And no apologies.
That can't just happen overnight.
No, it can't happen.
What are the practical measures you're planning to put in place to ensure that it happens?
That's why
it's always easier said than done.
Why
anybody can sit down and do a good document about industrialization, about moving agriculture forward, about
Mr. Zulu, well said.
Education.
In fact,
how exactly are you going to do it?
You are hitting the nail on the head. There's no shortage of brains in any of the political parties. They do very pretty manifestos. They can have very good developmental plans. The key difference between them and ourselves is that, first of all, we applied our manifesto in the past and it worked. And we're saying
except for the latter years?
No, there are no latter years. Let me say something. If you ask me, what's your excuse for the $7 billion debt when you're leaving government? What's our excuse? I'm saying that, one, we bore the brunt of the liberation struggle. Go to the UN and go to the archives right now. Go to the UN archives today. They will tell you Zambia spent far much more than the UN on the refugees in this republic. We spent. But the thing is, even though we spent that money, we still have things that you can point to. That this is what UNIP did. This is what UNIP left, even today. So we're fighting a liberation struggle all around us. We're being bombed here, in case you've forgotten. Or maybe, I don't know how old you are. You look very young, so I don't know. But we're being bombed. I remember sitting in class in Kamwala, and we heard bombs dropping. I remember ZNS kids, Zambians, dying defending bridges.
So that's the excuse for the $7 billion debt.
What? No.
And the excuse
we spent far much more. And even if you take the $7 billion debt and you match with the assets, they were far much more than $7 billion. The assets were greater than their abilities. And we're managing, that's the thing. There is no business that doesn't run with an overdraft. That was made for us an overdraft. We're using it, and we're running.
And what was the excuse for being kicked out, maybe?
People came, and Mr. Zulu, here is that I remember distinctly, clearly in my head, watching TV, and I saw Dr. Guy Scott, whom, by the way, I'm very fond of, by the way, though I'm different. He lifted a bag of 25 kg milling and said, you see this bag here costing so much, we shall reduce it. That's what he said, we shall reduce it. And we all cheered. Said, hey, these are the people. What happened? The farming, the whole cooperative structure, all the farmers collapsed. And we've never seen this cheap bag of milling meal. It's been now 25 years we've been waiting.
Isn't the situation better than queuing up for staple food?
Ask me, why did we queue up?
2 days,
why did you queue
coupons. You want people to go back to the days of coupons?
Now, what was a coupon, first of all? Because many kids, they don't know what a coupon is. A coupon is something that government gives you when you're in hardship so you can get milling meal. That's what a coupon is. The Americans, they've got their green cards where they give you food in times of hardship. You go, you get a green card, and then I think you get your coupon, and you go and get your food. To survive as an American citizen in hard times while waiting for the next job. So you survive on their coupons. So even here in Zambia, we give people coupons. We said, okay, you don't have money to buy your food now because times are hard. So you're going to get a bag of milling to feed your kids.
And it never worked.
It worked.
You had riots.
Because we had maize. No, you know, politics being what it is. People came and promised a lot. That's what I'm saying. People came and promised, said, we shall give you, we shall make these things cheap. I remember we even had a song about it, about how they promised to cheap them, but now what happened, people began dying. They promised much and delivered little. They went in with nothing in government and they came out billionaires. What's the word that they use in English? Filthy rich.
We're running out of time. Your final word.
I'm asking the Zambians out there.
Why should people give you the vote?
I'm asking Zambians out there that for 25 years we've suffered. We need a change. The change which is here, that UNIP is providing a change which is good for the whole nation, the whole entire nation. I think that we can provide a better economic life and better lives for our citizens out there. We can plan for it. And I can assure you we will be accountable. And we're very serious about this.
Mr. Kaunda.
Mr. Zulu.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for the time.
You've been watching Sunday Interview, and our guest today was Mr. Tilyenji Kaunda, the president for UNIP. We'll be back next week at the same time. Pleasant viewing.